It's time for Inside News. I'm Dale Matthews, and I'm joined today by Mike Jones and also Pat Ness. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Dale.
And hello, Pat.
Hello, Dale and Mike.
Right. So, as we've done in some previous shows here, we're asking some people that watch the show to come on and tell us from their perspective what this last election meant to us here in Josephine County, what it's going to mean in the future. And I've asked Pat to join us and tell us about that. So, Pat, what is your prognosis for the heartbeat of the county here?
I have hope that things are going to change with the new configuration of commissioners. There's always hope. I think Josephine County needs some change, and new blood might do that. I'm hopeful.
Okay. And now, on one hand, you could end up with two Grants Pass city councilors that will become commissioners. On the other hand, you could end up with Keith Heck, who's already in there, and Bill Hunker. What is your feeling about these combinations or any permutation?
Well, I personally believe Keith Heck has had his chance. I have not, since moving to Sunny Valley 3 years ago, I have not been happy with the performance of these three particular commissioners, Shell Walker and Simon Hare and Keith. I believe they've had their chances, and it's time for new ideas, new thinking, and hopefully for a whole new system on how this county will work. I'd like to see more transparency between the elected officials and less closed private doors, and also some more respect for the dedicated citizens that are volunteering their time and opinions trying to help the commissioners. Although I have listened over and over again to how the citizens have been chastised by these commissioners, or ignored, or made fun of, or several things. But anyway, it's time for something new. I do believe Dale and Mike really need to keep up their good work. A bad county is a bad county, and whoever gets into these seats are going to have their work cut out for them. I'm hopeful that they will be a group that can work together. I'm a little concerned that if two of the new commissioners are just Grants Pass, town people looking out for the interest of Grants Pass, I will sit and wait to see if they're alert and focused on what's going on in the county, too, besides what's going on in Grants Pass. So
right.
That's the brief synopsis.
That's good. Mike?
Yeah, I think she's right on there. I too am wondering: are they going to, continue just with, the type of city policy that we've seen out of the city in the past year or so, or are they going to, as they have promised to, pay more attention to the people that live out in the county? And in reality, the people out in the county are the ones who make the decisions when it comes to votes, for the most part. So we'll see whether or not they are going to listen to us, or whether they're going to maintain the status quo.
Well, one of the interesting things, I think, is that if it was Lily Morgan who did break off from the city council to vote against the city sales tax, and Bill Hunker, who has been keeping track of, he's the only outsider, the only person that's not already in government. If it was those two, maybe there'd be a better chance, but they're running against each other. And so what you're going to end up with, Keith Heck and Bill Hunker, or maybe the current president of the city council and Bill Hunker, or some other combination. So, and in my opinion, you don't end up with the two people who are somewhat breaking away from the system. Pat, what do you think about that mini analysis?
I think it's points well made, but my experiences here in Josephine County are that the city council does what they want and have as long as I've lived here. And I don't think they take input from the county very much, or that I'm aware of at all. And I would hope, there's been a lot going on in Sunny Valley with business owners, building owners that are in the city, and you think they would be swaying the opinions in the city for what rights they may have out in the county, starting new businesses. But the folks in Sunny Valley have not been happy with this arrangement. So going back to, we need more transparency. We need them to be attuned to what's going on in the entire county, and more open meetings, and inviting county residents to participate instead of closing the door in their faces. And I just have hope that the new renewed spirit on the board will have an open mind and be considerate of all residents in the county. We pay taxes, and big taxes, and hopefully they're going to get the picture early on that there are folks out in the county that are watching.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Now, we've spoken to the three candidates that are not already in county commission, already on the county commission, and asked them to come and visit us a couple of times a month, but that's every other week. And so far, all three of them have said, yes, we're going to do that. So what I'm hoping is that over a period of time that Mike and I can not pepper them with questions, but get some answers from them about what they plan to do, where they would possibly go. You still have decisions to be made, and we'll see what it looks like as we're moving on down the road here with them, theoretically. And so you will be able to see it here, Pat. We're glad that you're a fan of the show.
I am a fan of the show, and I have great hope that everyone will be more attuned to what the county folks feel and what they want. Even if you opened up a segment for questions from the county and, let people zap in questions, because I don't feel like we've had a voice. If anything, I won't go there. They've done their job as best as they could. It's time for them to move on. It's time for a new commission, and I'm hopeful that all of our jobs will become easier with some new blood in those positions. So thank you. Thank you for what you do, Dale and Mike. You do a fabulous service for this county and just representing the news. And I don't think I would have gotten it anywhere else. So thank you.
You are welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And we're going to get on with the news then. All right. Good evening to you.
Guys.
Thanks, Pat.
Nice night. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Mike, you went to an event today centered around Stu Sinnott, who kind of straddled two different counties. Tell us a little bit about that, would you? And who was there?
Yeah, that's Stu Sennett's funeral took place this afternoon, and there was a lot of people there, and a lot of a lot of political operatives, and that kind of sounds bad. These people weren't necessarily politicians, although there were some there. There was a couple of there was one sitting commissioner from Jackson County. Even Keith Heck was there. I'm not quite sure the connections that were made that made that happen. I don't know. But there was a lot of people that are involved in politics in both counties were there. As some people know, he lived over in Jackson County before he came here and was quite active over there just as he was here. And so a lot of good people had a lot of nice things to say about Stuart. And I met his wife, and it was a nice event. I learned a lot about the guy that I didn't know, and in person, if he had such a profound influence on so many people, there was really a lot of people there and a lot of heartfelt sentiment. That was it was good. It was a good event.
It's interesting to me that now that the election is over, who is it that you see at various events and who don't you see? One of the things we noticed when Sandy Casanelli was recalled is that she kept coming to county commissioners meetings. Really? You didn't see people who were elected before and left office in a relatively normal way. You didn't see them come back to any, where's Dwight Ellis? When's the last time anyone saw Dwight Ellis and coming to a committee, coming to any meetings and saying, hey, I'm concerned about my county. Here's what ought to be done. Sandy Casanelli still does that. And I was interested to note on the last couple of meetings after the election that, I was there. Of course, I'm there, and I'm there with the camera, and you guys are there with me. But where's everybody else that had these heartfelt feelings about the county? They're not there. Keith is paid to be there. Bill Hunker was there. Glad to see that. But there was no Ron Smith. Okay, he's running also. But at this Walden meeting, you had Dan DeYoung and Lily Morgan, and Keith Heck was there. That's three of the candidates. But there was no Ron Smith, and there was no, who was the other person that's Bill Hunker? All four of the candidates were there. But you don't see anybody else. You don't see any of the people who were all talking about how concerned they are about our county. Just no shows. Okay. So one interesting thing to me also about Jackson County, and it reminded me of that because Stu Sennett kind of bridged the two counties, is that KTVL, I think I look over on the site, KTVL recently had a story where they're pretty worried about their safety. Now, remember, they've said that they've got pretty good coverage for the police, similar to what Grants Pass has, 50 officers. But now they're saying, there are a number of people are saying, according to KTVL, that it's unsafe in downtown Medford. This one lady says, I never used to feel unsafe walking down the alleys at night, and now it seems to me, it scares me to death. And they feel there's a growing number of people in Medford who feel it's not safe in downtown Medford. Well, how much is it that they pay in taxes? $2.01.
Yeah, but that's for law enforcement funding. But city residents are paying quite a bit over that $2 1,000. To fund city services such as police and fire and things of that nature too. So they pay a lot, and I may be wrong about this, but it seemed to me that Bill Meyer was saying that they're paying somewhere on the neighborhood of $10 or $15 1,000.
Well, it's not enough.
It's not enough. Apparently, it's not enough. And, I mean, this is, you know what? I would be very interested to see what would happen if all of a sudden their law enforcement funding was no different than ours. And you could say, well, that's a much bigger place and they have more people. Yeah, that's right. They do, which means more money comes in if more people are paying 58 cents a thousand. I just, it's odd that we have watched the statistics, and the fact that we have not had as much money to put into law enforcement has not negatively affected the crime statistics seemingly at all. As a matter of fact, the crime appears to even be lower, and I don't know what to attribute that to, but I know that just as giving the schools more money is not going to automatically make our kids all valedictorian equivalents, throwing more money at law enforcement doesn't necessarily get you a better situation either.
Well, and then
it's all about management of those funds.
And look what's happening in Medford. It's not enough. Will it ever be enough?
No, it never will be. And that's the problem is, unfortunately, it's the structure of government. If you had, a police force and they just said, hey, listen, we're disbanding all the government apparatus here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to hire a bunch of people to run the sheriff's office. And, if you've been a sheriff before, you're welcome to come down and apply. But understand that all the rules are different. You can be hired or fired at any time. No unions, none of that stuff. We're just going to start over from square one, and we're going to run this completely independent of all state agencies, all this other stuff. You would come up with an efficient running situation. But as long as it's an apparatus of government in some way, I think you're always going to have some degree of, it's going to cost more and be less efficient than if you were running it privately. That's just the way I think about it.
Mike and I are finding increasingly on this show that what we're telling you seems less and less like news to us and more of the same kind of thing over and over. Like it just never changes. For example, last night we played back for you long sections of what it was that Representative Walden had to say to us. I wasn't going to ask any questions because I was interested in what the audience had to say more than his answers. But I finally had to give in and say, okay, listen, what's going to happen with SRS payments? We're supposedly in this emergency. We're not getting enough money. And despite the fact that a quarter of the country gets SRS payments, one of our senators, Senator Merkley, said, well, it's going to be a long, hard struggle, but we're not stopping. And this was kind of the opposite of what Walden had said. So I asked him, he gave pretty much the same answer too, as our senator had said. Well, here is a little clip from the Daily Courier, their take on this. And they decided to dedicate a section of this to the one question that I asked. They're certainly not going to say that I asked the question. What, are they crazy? But they said, we're hopeful they'll take up forestry next, Walden said. With the decline, and this is writing by the Courier now, not a quote from Walden. With the decline in harvests on federal land in the last 25 years, the federal government has been subsidizing counties under a program known as the Secure Rural Schools Act, which has expired. There that is again. There it is. It expired. We keep getting the money even though it has expired, Mike. They got to keep putting that into every article. The program meant in the past about $4.5 million for Josephine County this fiscal year. It meant for this fiscal year and the one beginning in July. Well, now, if it's expired,
listen, Dale, don't you understand? Don't you understand English? We're crying out loud.
Brother. Okay, and then the last paragraph that hits it on the head here, and again, more from the Daily Courier, severe service cuts, including elimination of sheriff's office road patrols, are possible if funding is not restored. Sheriff Dave Daniel has said, well, hello, wait a minute. Where did he say this? Sheriff Dave Daniel has said fewer inmates might be held at the county jail too. Really?
Yeah.
Well,
it seemed to me, wasn't there a fund somewhere that could fund road patrols?
Oh, no, that never existed.
I could have sworn there was money somewhere for road patrols that they, that they could have used, but they didn't for some reason. No, I don't know.
No. You see, now we're moving on to the Grants Pass City budget. That was long in the past. And when things are in the past, they're simply hearsay.
Yeah, it's hearsay.
Right.
Hearsay.
Those of you who watch the show know who we're talking about. Yeah, it's just hearsay. So one more thing I had to add in and that was from this weekend's newspaper, from the Courier. One more thing I had to add. I think that you're going to find this quite enjoyable. Here is the newest ad from Keith Heck. Now, what does this thing say? It says, to all of Josephine County, thank you. To all of you who voted for me in the primary, allowing me to go on to the November general election, I thank you. Okay. Many obstacles of negativism have been overcome. They have? And what is the indication that these obstacles of negativism have been overcome? Because he was elected? And because he was selected to go on? What is the evidence that these obstacles, I count myself as among those obstacles of negativism, that I've been overcome?
Yes, apparently you have. And listen, I got to tell you, this is some analysis that that I got from. Oh, go ahead.
Well, he has a little bit more. He said, now get this. This is my favorite line of all. Childish attacks and slurs were overcome.
Yeah. He appears to be using this win as a vindication of all of his previous sins as a commissioner. Here, let me just point something out to you here, and this is not my own analysis. Thank you for the person who gave this analysis to me. If you take Keith Heck, if you take Keith Heck and Dan DeYoung, and you combine them, that's 40%. Okay, these people are not representative of the majority in the county. They are not. But here's what happened: the conservative vote split itself between too many candidates. So it was almost impossible for one of those candidates to beat what they would get from the establishment voter type people who vote for establishment candidates all the time, like Keith Heck and Dan DeYoung. They each got 20% or roughly 20%. So together they're like 40% of the vote. That leaves 60% is the rest. So these are not representatives of the county as a whole. And for him to claim vindication from 15%, I don't think so.
Childish attacks have been overcome. They have? Childish attacks have been overcome? When did that happen?
Yeah. Well, listen, this is all. It's amazing that Keith Heck has an opportunity to thank people for sending him through to the general election, and as always, he proves yet again that Dale Matthews is living rent free in his head.
Two of the three of his points were about childish attacks and people who yell at meetings or whatever. Really, 2 out of 3 of his congratulatory statements were about that.
Yeah.
This figures largely in his history and future. This show.
Apparently.
Wow. Childish attacks are now over. You mean like when he said that I was no longer a member of an organization and they don't want me, and I've got a 4.40 rating? All of this is nonsense. And he did that during his protected time. I asked him about it on Wednesday at the weekly business session. He just sat there. He laughed a little bit.
Well, the campaign's over, for crying out loud.
Well, I mean, but it continues, this stuff about making things up, and it really continues on Facebook. Oh my gosh. So that's some look at the local media in general as it relates to politics in the area. Now we're going to dip into the city council meeting, the Grants Pass City Council meeting, because there's 2 cities in Josephine County. And while the video is a little dark on this, we've done the best that we can to bring it to you. And I think that you'll find that there are parts of this that are pretty interesting. Some of it are things that you already know. Some of it is kind of summing it up in a way that you haven't heard before. So we're going to let the city manager, Aaron Kubik, fill you in as he's filling in the Grants Pass City Council about where their budget now stands. And we'll have more from the county and a bit more from the city as the next couple of weeks happen. Here we go.
As mentioned, property taxes is a large portion of that operating budget and the operating revenues that we receive. So wanted to break down sort of what those consist of. We have a permanent property tax rate of 4.1335 per thousand, which brings in about a little over $12 million. We have a public safety levy, which is $1.79 per thousand, which brings in just over $5 million. We have a public safety bond at 0.3866, which brings in a little over $1 million, for a total of $18.4 million in property tax.
Wow. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's how they're able to fund public safety with 50 officers and all the other projects they want, but they're not done. And so does it make you kind of wonder just a little bit what they were about when they were talking about a city sales tax? And not money, you see.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Not enough money. They need more money.
Wow. Here we go.
Yeah. So to break that down even more, it's the property taxes are really, there's different ways you calculate it that ultimately bring in that assessed value. And for 2016, the numbers look like this. It was up 6.6%, which is a positive. That's great. What was that 6.6 increase? It was due to 3.7 due to an annexation that we did last year. 1.9% was from existing property value increasing, and then 1% was an increase from new construction that was realized within the city boundaries.
Now, I still have my same question as always, and maybe it's a naive question. If Grants Pass City is annexing property from the UGB, the urban growth boundary, into the city, and they're realizing all of this money because they've now annexed that property, they're not annexing it from new creations by God. They're annexing it from land that used to belong to the county. So why is it that suddenly when Grants Pass City adds it on, it's a bunch of money that comes into their budget? But
I can tell you why that is.
Go ahead.
Because before that property was being taxed at 58 cents a thousand. Now it's being taxed at about $6 or $7 a thousand. That's why. But
the part that confuses me the most, is that the people there are not fighting tooth and nail against this because their taxes are going up 10 times or more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems that way. I have done calculations of what the difference is between, the tax on my property here if it were in the city and what ultimately that would be. And it's somewhere on the order of slightly more than double, oddly enough. Because the thing is that I'm not paying 58 cents. Only, as I'm out in the county. There are school you pay a certain amount over. It's only the county property tax at 58 cents a thousand. Then there's you pay a bunch for the schools. Most of the money from my property taxes goes to the schools, and I wish I had one of my bills sitting right here. I would show you. It's incredible how much the schools get from property taxes. It's incredible.
Based on you saying that, because it's our show, we can do what we want to, and hopefully it's still interesting. Sure. We recently got kind of a question from one of our friends, Raymond Smith, that also was running for commissioner. And he brought up some questions about the ballot measure here, and ballot measure 1769, the Rogue Community College District. And he had questions of us, and we started looking into it. Now, I have to admit that I don't need these. I have to admit that
He doesn't need them. He's wearing them for fashion purposes.
That's it. Now, it says here on the explanation that, see if this makes any sense. Now, we're not going to do a whole show about this because there isn't a whole show of material. But it does say Rogue Community College District. Okay. And yes, we already have talked about, and people now seem to realize that we kind of got hoodwinked on this a bit, because here it was. Yeah. Two counties are in the same taxing district. And what was not explained to us on purpose, that there's no way that these people that were pushing this didn't realize this. They did not explain to us that if Jackson County says yes, or a majority of them say yes, and Josephine County, a majority say no, we're still going to have to pay it.
Yeah, too damn bad. Listen, therein lies the solution to their problem. They've been trying to figure out how they could tax us for years and raise our taxes. All you have to do is merge with Jackson County.
No, don't tell anybody this.
And then take votes, and then we'll always lose, and we'll always have to pay more in property taxes. There's your solution right there.
Wasn't this Cheryl's solution?
See, I'm trying to bring us all together.
Wasn't this Cheryl's solutions to merge us with the governor's office so that we would end up having to do whatever they tell us to do? Okay, well, forget that Mike just said what? I don't know what he just said. Okay, so one of the things that we did not know, and nobody was going to make it clear to us, was that if you said no on this, it didn't really make much of a difference because Jackson County was going to drag us into it anyway. Okay, that's deceptive. And yes, they won their thing, but they had to win it, and we're seeing this increasingly. I'm not making this up. The same thing happened with the city. Why? There's no such thing as permanent, Mr. Matthews. And we're seeing it with the county. Oh, well, there's no future for SRS. Nobody is working on this. They're lying to us. And they're getting their way. The only way they can get their way is to tell us things which are false. If they were straight with us, we wouldn't go along with it, would we?
That's right.
We would have worked harder to defeat this thing if people did not want it. I said no because it's a new tax. I made a promise to you. I intend to stick with that. But okay. So here's the part that Raymond Smith brought up, which I thought, and by the way, he also said, what would we do if the citizens wanted to separate that district? Well, there's an interesting question. That would be an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that given this last vote, if we don't like being dragged into it by another county, how do you think that Jackson County would feel? I know this isn't on the subject over my shoulder, but how do you think that Jackson County would feel if they were combined with Willamette? And Willamette said, oh, we want this for bike paths or something, which some people want, to plant flowers along the bike paths, snapdragons. And Jackson County was forced to do it because Willamette County wanted to. Yeah, I don't think they'd like that very much. So
probably not.
Here's the thing that I didn't do my homework on this. I should have. And maybe some of you that got a voter's pamphlet, some of us got a voter's pamphlet. It says here, see if this sounds familiar, or if this sounds like it makes any sense to you. Here's the question. Shall Rogue Community College District be authorized to issue general obligation bonds not exceeding $20 million. Gosh, it seems like they're building a water plant. If the bonds are approved, they will be payable from taxes on property or property ownership, whatever that means, that are not subject to the limits of sections 11 and 11B, Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution. What? What?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think that Raymond brought up a good point, and we really need to know
what's in that section. What's in that
what those mean.
Yeah,
right.
So Mike and I both
needs to be studied. Yeah.
My guess is that, honestly, now most of you did not go look up the Oregon Constitution. You didn't. I didn't either. And find out what the heck it is that Article 11 said with sections 11 and 11B. Not 11A now, 11 and 11B. So, Mike, want to tell them what we found there?
Well, actually, not a great deal yet. I mean, there's a lot of information contained in these sections here. So we don't have anything definitive to say about it, but it may well be, there is a possibility that not all of your property is subject to this tax based on their exclusions listed in the voters pamphlet there. So we're looking into that, and I guess we're going to have a guest on the program that has more information about that here at some point.
I don't know. Now, the fellow that I'd love to have on the show, and I don't know if he's going to come on, is Grant Walker. Let me play back for you a little piece from KOBI News. As I recall, there were only two people that spoke. One of them was Grant Walker, and the other some local guy that doesn't know how to comb his hair. This was real nice that she didn't tell me about this.
Yeah.
Community College's $20 million bond limit.
Well, they have mirrors.
County voters, while voters in Josephine County rejected it altogether. But despite that, homeowners in the RCC district will still have to pay taxes. NBC5's Nicole Stein is live at this hour at Medford RCC campus with more. Nicole.
Our Measure 1769 passed last night with 53% in favor, thanks to majority of Jackson County voting yes. But if Josephine County had their way, it wouldn't have passed. Rogue Community College is ready to start finalizing projects now that the $20 million bond is approved. The school will use the money to expand and improve facilities as well as build new ones on all three of their campuses. But one Grants Pass resident says a lot of people didn't know that the measure passed without their consent.
There were a lot of people who said, what? No, that can't be right. We voted against that. Yeah, well, we're tied in with Jackson County, and because Jackson County decided to say yes, now we have no choice. Oh, that's lovely.
Public Information Officer for RCC, Grant Walker, says that the money will be split between all three campuses as evenly as possible. It just depends on what projects belong on each campus. The one thing he did assure me is that it will benefit the students no matter what. So taxpayers' money is...
Hey, you know what? I don't like the idea of SS services, but that's just the historian part of me.
Going to good use.
Yes.
All of these projects are capital projects, which means it's all going into improvements of facilities and building some new buildings. So it's not about operations or salaries or anything like that. It's all about improving our facilities for our students.
Sure.
It's besides the point.
Says the project won't all start at once, but some will be underway as early as this fall. Live in Medford, Nicole Stein, NBC5 News.
Live in Medford, reporting from outside a closed...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. You know what's funny is that we all know how this works. People that in government what you do is you fight for funding for a particular part of government. And as soon as those funds come in, then you subtract the funds that you normally give to that department. So then having more money to throw around at other things that you want to do. And the new money that comes in pays for what the old money used to pay for. That's how that little game works. Now, let me ask you something. There are 3 campuses, RCC campuses. 2 of them are in Medford. The money is going to be spread around equally. Sounds like we're getting the shaft here, because 2/3 of the money that we spend for this particular levy is going to Jackson County out of our pockets.
After we said no, after
Thank
we
God.
said no, we don't want it at all.
Yeah, that's what a ripoff. You know
This
what?
I'm getting sick of
I got it.
regionalism. Go ahead.
Yeah, jeez, man. Yeah, we got shafted on this one, no question.
And they knew. Of course, they knew what the results would be and who would wag this dog, and they didn't tell us about it, did they? I mean, we went through this thing, and there's nothing in there about, by the way, if this happens, this other thing is going to happen. We did not know. Now, could we have done anything about it? Well, there are some people that might have made sure that they got a little bit more publicity out there for this thing, saying, hey, did you know this? I blame Mike, partly. Yeah, I do. Yeah, because Mike didn't tell you.
No.
And our audience, you guys that are watching.
And I knew too.
Yeah, you guys are watching this. You warn anybody? And me, I didn't go look up section Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution. Yeah. What's the matter with me?
Yeah. Well, we were consumed with another thing going on. That's sad. And it did occur to me that, hey, wait a minute, I mean, how does this work? I wondered, what happens if it passes over there and doesn't pass? I wonder, but I thought there's no way. Of course, if we send it packing over here, we won't have to spend the money. Listen, why not? Why not? If it passes over in Jackson County, they use it to fund the 2 RCC campuses that are over there. And then if it passes in both places, then the money that comes from people in Josephine County goes to the Josephine County chapter of the RCC here. That just makes sense to me, but apparently it didn't make sense to them.
It's never going to pass here, and they're never going to be able to get us to do it unless they trick us. We've been tricked again.
Yeah.
They have to deceive us. How many times have we seen this recently?
Right.
Where the only way to get things done is to keep it out of our hands or deceive us. I'm not making this up. Look at the vote results. Oh, well, you're exaggerating, Mr. Matthews. No, I'm not. You don't understand economic development, Mr. Matthews. Oh, yes, I do. You're tricking us. Mike?
Well, not only that, is that Jackson County, and the RCC feels that this is so necessary that you have to steal money from one of the poorest counties in the state to subsidize your RCC operation over in Jackson County. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. And I hope you Jackson County residents that shafted us with your vote are happy today. Thank you so much.
We both know, because I talk to these guys a lot, that the TV stations and even radio over in Jackson County think that we're crazy because we vote property taxes down. And I've heard just recently again, well, eventually you're going to have to give in. You're going to have to knuckle under. I hear this all the time from these guys. You're eventually going to have to do so. Well, I hope that we continue voting the way that we want to. Now, whether we vote all for it or all against it, it's up to us. Well, apparently it's not up to us, is it? And don't forget now, Keith Heck and the other 2 were part of a plan to see that our vote was negated. And don't forget that one of the main guys pushing for this is also running for county commissioner, and their plan was that your vote could be revoked. Now, I'm not happy with that. And I've said many times, whether we're geniuses or lunkheads, it should be our choice, but it's increasingly not becoming our choice. And even when we vote against something, look, even when the residents of Grants Pass said, I know it's a relatively small thing compared to all the other bigger things in life, when they said, we don't like this new logo, well, you're getting a new logo no matter what. I mean, the city council just skipped right on by the fact that people have said that, and they laugh about it. We pointed out to you in a meeting recently where they were laughing, boy, I sure hope that, one of these days the letters to the editor will catch up and get on the bandwagon and enjoy this thing that everybody hates, because they're not listening to us anymore. There's one solution for people who want it, the majority to rule. Oh, all you do is simply ignore whatever the majority says. Really?
Yeah, listen, more and more, it's apparent that we are subject to government as opposed to being a government subject to the will of the people. And, either get used to it or get involved and get activist in some way in counteracting this here, or it's going to be the future. The part that bothers me is that there's so many people who are totally disengaged, don't even know this stuff is going on, and one day they're going to be waking up and somebody's going to want $10 or $15 $1,000 from them property taxes, and they're going to go, what is going on here? When is this going to stop? These people want more money from me. And by the time it gets to that point, those people aren't going to be able to do anything about it. And that's, we're holding them at bay at 58 cents. I think, that's a wise thing to do until we see responsibility from government.
Well, I agree with you up to a certain point. Look at what just happened in the last election. We talked about this a little bit two nights ago. People voted no on property taxes in our county, which is no surprise. But they voted yes for the people who are the strongest pushers of property taxes.
Yeah, but that's a misinterpretation of what happened there. I'm telling you that 40% of the vote was taken up by two people. It was even 40% was split between two people who are establishment candidates. There wasn't anybody else in there that was an establishment candidate. They were all alternatives to the establishment. So if you want to look at that correctly, the alternative to the establishment got 60% of the vote.
Well, let me put it in a slightly different way, because these two guys were not running against each other. Okay. So is that right? No, they were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were.
Put it slightly differently. When the city sales, let me just finish this one thought. When the Grants Pass city sales tax did not pass, 80% of the population said no, 20% said yes, and Dan DeYoung got 20%. In his election thing, when the nuisance ordinances did not pass, 80% of the people said no, 20% voted yes, and Keith Heck got 20%. We've talked on this show before. There's this hardcore 20%. It's only 20, but in this case, that's all that it took. You can find 20% that will say, "I don't think there should be a Bill of Rights," Mike.
Right. Yes, you can. You can find those people. The point is that our side, and this is what happens when you're in the city. You have people that are not self-reliant. They vote for services because they fear somebody has to supply these services. I'm not able to protect myself. I'm not able to do this, that, or the other thing. So they vote for that. And but people that are out in the county, people that are more independently self-reliant and that sort of thing, they vote a different way. But the very thing, right now we're being screwed by the very thing that makes these people independent and not have the need for the services of government. Is that they are all so independently minded that they go, I like this guy. He's the conservative, or he's the alternative to the establishment that I want in there. And they all have a different idea about that. I'm telling you, we need to get together. We need to, in the next run of things, we need to be a little bit smarter about things. We need to find a candidate who's willing to run in and set up a bunch of people and go, okay, these all look like good people, but we're all going to get together and talk about it and pick one of those people. Well, and have that person run instead of having 15 people run. It's a bad idea.
Ego played such a big role in this last election. I mean, we had one guy, don't even need to mention him, that had invited everybody to his victory celebration before the vote was even taken. And he didn't end up being any kind of clear victor of anything. I mean, these are people that are absolutely convinced, that God has chosen them to run the county? I don't understand some of these folks. And you've got others that are running that had to have known that they didn't have a prayer to end up in the final top 3, and they still were out there proselytizing on the street at night. All the time, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. But listen, I don't really want to talk any crap about people.
I understand.
I think a lot of these people that ran with good intentions, of being the alternative person. But the bottom line is that we had establishment figures in the race, and we had counter-establishment figures in the race. When you have one counter-establishment figure when you have one establishment figure or 2 establishment figures in the race, and the rest are counter-establishment, the establishment people are always going to vote for that person. That's their person. Yeah. They're not going to go find somebody else. They're going to give their votes to those people that think that way. And so this outcome. Yeah. Okay. I don't really think so. I've seen.
They have to protect their moneyed interests. If they want business to continue as usual.
Yes, but that's not what happened.
Person.
That is not what happened, though. That is not what happened. What happened? Listen, Dandy Young got 19%. That's just a few more percent than Bill and Ron Smith got in their elections.
That's okay.
This was not a majority. It was broken up by a bunch of other people getting 10 and 5 and 7 and 6 and whatever.
It was. I'm saying a solid 20% that wants business to continue as usual. They really need to vote for the person that's going to continue business as usual. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not talking about the amount of money that was spent
and they did. And in the position 2 thing, that vote got split between Dandy Young and Keith Heck. And so you got roughly 40%, which leaves 60% that voted for other people. For crying out loud, if we had 1 or maybe even 2 to 2, you might have had a better chance of ending up with a candidate that was going to do something different. And then, in the position 3 situation, Lily Morgan, clearly the establishment candidate. Nobody else was. And
she got 40%.
She got 45.
Yes, and
45%. But listen, that leaves 55% that is left.
Okay, so
I'm telling you,
here's something that will never happen. So it's easy for me to prognosticate, and that is if we had this is a nonpartisan election. If it was similar to the national elections, where you've got 2 parties, I don't know which Republican Party you're talking about. There's about 3 or 4 Republican parties, but you've got people that chose that, and then those 2 are going to face off of each other. The way that it is, we've said this many times, I haven't found anybody that disagrees. In Josephine County, it's the Old Boys Network and everybody else. Whatever name you give to the Old Boys Network, it's the establishment, as Mike has been saying, and everybody else. Now, this cannot happen, but if there was a primary election that chose the establishment candidate and then chose one person to be the everybody else candidate, then you would have the establishment person, which could be Keith Heck, could be Dan DeYoung, versus the winner among all of the alternate kind of people. That's the way politics actually works. That's the reality of politics in our area. And when you've got Sandy Casanelli running against me, now, any votes that I got probably would have gone to Sandy and vice versa. Probably because the same kind of people like our general iconoclastic politics and the kindness is change is needed. So when she decided to run against me, oh my gosh, what are you doing, Sandy? What are you doing? Okay, I'm not talking about Keith Heck and who's that guy that runs that News Reviews? I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about candidates that can actually get some of the votes.
But what I'm saying, but all those people played a part in this defeat of the counter establishment here.
Too many choices.
Yeah.
Really?
To me, it is. I got to tell you, no, this is clear to me. And, at some point here, I may reveal who I'm talking about that told me this. I was feeling kind of dumpy about things. And then I, had a lunch meeting here a couple of days ago and was talking to somebody about it. And the light went on in my head. This is exactly right. Perfect analysis of the situation is that, listen, this doesn't show that the establishment, that people want the establishment. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. No, this shows that the counter-establishment viewpoint is winning. It's not winning elections. That's the sad part about it.
Well, what does it show about this show, Mike? And that there wasn't as
I don't know
of the election night coverage as we thought there were going to be, and our number of viewers has maintained a pretty high standard, but it's just about the same all the time. What do we need to do to reach out and get more information out to? Let me give you an example, and then please answer at any length you like. So I'm talking with somebody the other day, and this person says, we just happened to be chatting, and I said, well, this and this is happening in county politics. Really? And I said, yeah, it's well, no, where would I go to see such a thing? Now, this is someone who says, I got to watch this from now on because I had no idea that was happening. And that might have influenced my vote. And I might have done this, and I might have done that. I might have done this other thing. Well, all we can do is put out the information. And then if you say, well, I totally agree with those two bozos, okay. But I'm finding a lot more people just at random who are saying, no, I don't like that kind of thing that's happening. Where would I go to find out that information? Well, there are some places I don't have to mention that you won't go because you're not going to be told those things, or they're going to interpret it in some upside down way based on what actually happened, and you've seen it as applies to this thing with Walden. But what we try to do is present you an alternative. We're the only ones that are doing it. The only ones. What onus is now on us, Mike? You and I.
Yeah, I think that as much as I want to blame non-participation and people not being educated, I think that a lot of the people in the county, they knew what to do, or they know what the problem is, as evidenced by the vote. As I said, if you look at this as two entities as opposed to 7 people, clearly the counter-establishment, what wants the opposite of what the commissioners and the establishment candidates want is the majority. And the problem is you can't funnel them all together and say, here's your candidate, vote for this person. This person represents an alternative to that. It's too late for that.
Yeah.
And
it's not like the partisan system, as I was just saying. So what happened in this is that you've got people who are in a precarious financial position who 20% of them said, I like the guy that's in there now. the guy that just says that, oh, well, now he's put an end to, rancorous behavior at county commissioners meetings. Really? Okay. And then you've got a guy that was a promoter of the city sales tax. And so though that 40% did not vote for change. Then over on the other side, you've got 45% that went to a former city councilor, and you've got a much smaller percent that went to someone who is pushing for change, at least a certain amount of change. 1 out of 4.
Yes, but she was the only. The thing is that on the position 2 side, you had 2 people that represented that, the establishment way,
Right.
and on the position 3 side, you only had one. And there was a difference between. There's a difference between Lily Morgan and Dandy Young.
Yes,
Lily Morgan is much more approachable, much more likable. And I think more knowledgeable candidate than Dandy Young is. And she was smart enough to put the kibosh on the sales tax. I'm not advocating her or whatever, but what I'm saying is that there was more appeal to there, and that may be responsible for the other 5% that we saw.
So and many people ask me, we're almost done here. Many people ask me, well, if you luck out or whatever, if you win, are you going to continue doing the show? Well, absolutely. You can imagine just, what kind of input that we'd have into the show that we never had before, information. I'm hoping that we can get that from at least one of these candidates. We won't be getting it from Keith Heck, obviously, but from one of the others. And that will aid our information and your information. So that's one potentially good thing. We're not going to have the kind of openness and the kind of clear communication with people and the kind of break from the past that I had hoped for, and that we would say goodbye to certain department heads who have been running this whole thing and deciding what it was that they thought that we should know and what we shouldn't know. I mean, just the legal counsel who said, you've requested this information, it's required by state law to respond to you in 5 days, and we're not going to give it to you. Really? That's our legal counsel, okay? So I think that guy's influence should be minimized. We're not going to get those things, but we can get some things. And what's not necessarily good for the county is kind of good for this show, and that we've got something to talk about besides, hearts and flowers. So I'm not pleased with that, but this show will continue.
Well, yeah, I got to tell you, though, the one thing that I have learned from this show is that there is always enough going on in county government, and I think that probably any locality's government anywhere, you would find all of these same things going on. There is always enough of this content to have something to talk about, and I think that, listen, I got to go back to it every single time. The citizens have an oversight responsibility. They need to know this stuff. They should know this stuff. They should be able to speak directly to their to elected officials about this kind of stuff, and be able to have a conversation that's based on being informed. And you can affect change that way, because people are going to go, wait a minute, I used to be able to roll right through with this stuff because nobody knew what I was talking about. But now everybody knows what I'm talking about, and it's a lot harder to sell. That's where we have to be.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We will have more scintillating material for you tomorrow night. Scintillating.